All right, so today we're diving into something that I think we all dread, and that is finding an unauthorized charge on your bank statement or credit card statement.
Oh, yeah.
And, you shared some really excellent resources that outline the steps to take if and when this happens.
Right.
And I think our mission here is to sort of distill that down to the most crucial information.
Yeah.
So that, if and when this does happen to somebody listening to us,
Right.
that, they don't feel overwhelmed and they know exactly the steps that they need to take.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think knowing what to do in these situations can really take away some of that anxiety.
For sure.
Yeah.
So let's get right to it.
Okay.
What constitutes an unauthorized charge? What exactly are we looking out for here?
Well, unauthorized charge is basically any transaction that you didn't permit.
Okay.
So this could happen for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
It could be that your physical card was lost or stolen. Maybe your account details were compromised in some way through a data breach or some other kind of security lapse.
Yeah.
It could even be a mistake on the part of the merchant when they process a payment.
Yeah.
But really, the key takeaway here is that acting quickly is paramount.
Yeah.
The sooner you address the situation, the better.
Absolutely. And so, okay, so you're looking at your statement and you see something that looks a little fishy.
Right.
What's the very first thing you should do?
Well, before you panic,
Yeah.
I would say just double check the merchant name.
Okay.
Sometimes the name that appears on your statement might not be exactly what you expect. It could be like a parent company or, a slightly different business name.
Oh, I see.
So do a quick Google search.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might be surprised and realize, oh, yeah, I do recognize that business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But let's say you've done that due diligence.
Yeah.
And, this is definitely not something that you purchased or that you authorized.
Right.
What then?
So the next step would be to try to contact the merchant directly.
Okay.
Explain the charge to them. They might be able to identify it right away.
Okay.
And potentially even issue you a refund or clarify what the charge was for.
Okay.
Sometimes it could be a simple administrative error on their end.
I see.
So that's always worth trying first.
And so if contacting the merchant doesn't resolve it, or if maybe you're still feeling uneasy about that particular charge, what's the next step?
Yeah, in that case, you definitely need to notify your bank or your credit card issuer right away.
Okay.
They have dedicated fraud departments specifically equipped to handle these situations.
Got it.
And most financial institutions have very clear procedures for reporting unauthorized charges.
Mm-hmm.
So contacting them promptly is really crucial to starting that resolution process.
Okay, so you've contacted your bank, you've let them know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
What is one thing you can do immediately that can prevent any further unauthorized activity while they're investigating?
Well, as a preventative measure, most banks and credit card companies allow you to temporarily lock or freeze your card.
Yeah.
You can usually do this online or through their mobile app.
Okay.
And this will prevent any new unauthorized charges from going through while the investigation's underway.
Okay.
It's important to note, though, that pre-authorized payments like subscriptions or bills that you've already set up might still be processed.
Okay, yeah, that's a really important distinction.
Yeah.
So, be aware of those.
Right.
Okay, so you've reported the charge. Now you need to officially dispute it, right?
Yes, exactly.
What does that process generally look like?
So typically you can file a dispute online, over the phone, or through your bank or card issuer's app.
Okay.
And they'll usually ask you for some key details.
Yeah.
The transaction date, the
Yeah.
amount, and most importantly, why you believe it's unauthorized.
Okay.
So be as specific as possible.
Yeah.
For example, if you were out of the country on the date of the transaction, or you don't recognize the website at all.
Right.
The more information you provide, the better.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And what can you generally expect after you submit a dispute?
Well, oftentimes the bank or card issuer will issue you a temporary credit for the disputed amount while they investigate.
Right.
And that investigation time frame can vary.
Yeah.
It could take a few days. It could take a few weeks, just depending on the complexity of the situation.
Got it.
But yeah, that's generally what you can expect.
Okay, so that's, what to do when it happens.
Right.
But let's talk about prevention.
Yeah.
What are some proactive steps that our listeners can take to reduce, the likelihood of ever encountering an unauthorized charge in the first place?
Yeah. Well, I think setting up transaction alerts is a great first step.
Okay.
This way you'll get a notification every time there's activity on your account,
Mm-hmm.
which allows you to spot anything suspicious really quickly. But, I would say even with alerts, it's still important to regularly review your statements.
Yeah.
Don't just assume that everything is correct.
Right. Take a look at it.
Exactly.
Okay. Are there any other, sort of protective measures that you think our listeners should consider?
Well, yeah, it's always good to just practice strong online security habits in general.
Right.
Use strong, unique passwords for all of your online accounts.
Yeah.
And be very, very cautious about sharing your financial information.
Yeah.
Legitimate companies will almost never ask you for your password or your full credit card details via email or phone.
Right.
So be very wary of that.
Yeah.
Enabling two-factor authentication wherever it's offered is also a great way to add an extra layer of security.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're using public Wi-Fi, I'd be very careful about, doing any kind of sensitive transactions.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So it's good to know that even though it's unsettling, if you do find an unauthorized charge, that there are very clear actions you can take.
Absolutely.
And then also that there are ways to, be proactive and protect yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Financial institutions have processes in place to handle these situations.
Okay.
And acting swiftly and providing clear information is really key to a smoother resolution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to summarize, I think, stay vigilant.
Yes.
Act immediately when you spot something that looks unfamiliar.
Right.
And prioritize those proactive security measures that we talked about.
Exactly. Make account monitoring a regular habit.
Yeah.
Don't ignore anything that seems even slightly out of place.
Right.
And always report suspicious activity without delay.
That is great advice.
Thanks.
And on that note, I think a final thought for everyone listening is, considering all the various ways that these unauthorized charges can occur, what's one immediate step you can take today to strengthen your account security? Something to think about until our next deep dive.
Right.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in.
If this podcast helped you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep making these videos. Thanks for watching.